We've seen a mop defense on the channel, but I believe this is the first time that we've seen a leaf rake. Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed defensive lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Neil Widener. Today's video comes out of Houston, Texas.
Lucky Gunner is my recommended trusted provider of freedom seeds for range or defensive use. In stock, good prices, and rocket fast shipping are why I go back again and again. Because of new guidelines, I can't link their site or say it, but you're smart and you can find it with a simple Google search. Stick it to the man by paying them a visit today.
Guy in the bottom in red is our aggressor, and our other guy comes out of the convenience store to get into his pickup truck, and the guy demands his car keys. And our victim's like, no, I'm not giving you my car keys. Well, he shows him something between these two papers he has that was a black object that our intended victim took to be a firearm. But he's like, no, man, I'm not giving it to you. Get away from me. So now the guy is going to kind of, chase him down into there, not let him go back inside the store. Now, it's the Houston PD that made the jump here because our guy started whooping on him. You see him punch him down there and then beat him up a little bit more. And then he grabs a leaf rake out of the back of his truck, and now he is going to get after him. You saw the dude had something in his hand and threw it at him at that point, and it kind of runs off. And that lets our intended victim, our defender, get himself out of the danger zone and into the store. Cops are still looking for this guy. Look for the guy with the leaf rake marks on his face. I mean, Neil, I don't even know that he needed the rake, for God's sake. He was winning the fist fight.
Yeah, he was on top of this dude, knocked him down once already. I don't know that he needed it, but it did my heart good to watch him go get it.
Yeah, I mean, the humor component alone is worth it.
Yep.
Lessons here start with transitional spaces. And one of the things that we talk about with transitional spaces is baselines. Looking at, is everything as I expect it here? Is everything normal? And outside of a convenience store like this, you expect people getting in and out of cars. But I will say, pay special attention to people who are loitering, because somebody who is loitering, now I get it, in some neighborhoods outside the convenience store is a social gathering place, and some people loiter out there because they got nowhere else to be. But those people you should pay attention to. You should kind of have an extra mark on, especially as you're exiting the store here. You can look through these glass doors, and that little bit of extra attention might save you a big problem, huh, Neil?
We really need to focus on people that are focused on us. And if somebody's really paying attention to you, pay attention to them. And if it's somebody or are acquainted with, a nice little head nod or whatever, even if you aren't acquainted with them, give them a head nod that you recognize that they're paying attention to you. But that's going to, a bad guy isn't just going to walk up to you, not looking at you. If you have that opportunity, pay attention to that, because that's a key indicator and a huge red flag. What I like is it looks like our good guy came out of the store and immediately made eye contact. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to run him off every single time, but he was paying attention and he knew that there was something up and this guy wanted to talk. So that's one thing leads to another.
Yeah, just by way of point, by the way, so people are going to say, why'd you blur this out, John? I didn't. Houston PD did, blurred out the defender's identity. I'm guessing the defender didn't want to be identified on camera. So that's them. They're the ones who did that. I do think here, our defender gets full marks, right? And yeah, there's going to be some little nitpicky stuff, but this guy gets really full marks for bravery, really full marks for being willing to protect himself. And he drove this dude off and handled his business. So kudos to him for that. This is a really good one. Now, as a guy goes out, he kind of turns his back. I would say I'm a little bit reticent to turn my back on an unknown contact like that. And now our guy comes and says, hey man, give me your keys. That's, he's forcibly taking a vehicle, but taking it from your person. And as he shows him something here, shows him a black object, I think a reasonable person would look at that and say, that's a firearm, or could. And if you did reasonably believe that he had a firearm, it would 100% be justified to draw your own firearm and shoot him. Now, that being said, Neil, you better be fast if you choose that route.
Yeah, at that distance, if he does have a gun in his hand, Now it's hard to see from this angle if it was between a couple of pieces of paper and all that kind of stuff. But if he's got a gun in his hand, man, you got to be rocket fast to be in that gunfight in the moment. So, I think, like you say, I think if a guy comes up to you and shows you something, he wants you to believe it's a gun. He is threatening you with lethal force. So I think it's reasonable to use lethal force to defend yourself in this case, but you're going to have some explaining to do. And so, the next step of that is wait your turn, get them to glance away, get them to, wait for them to look around. He's going to be nervous and he's going to want to make sure that that you are alone, that somebody else isn't coming out there, that something else isn't going to, affect, his little game that he's playing right here. So they're going to look away. And when they look away, that's your go signal.
Yep. Find your go signal. I love what you said there, Neil, about, waiting your turn. Now, eventually this guy's like, hey, give me your stuff. And our dude backs up. And now again, what is our opportunity? I think really here, when you're backing away for time, you notice that what our victim is doing here is he's trying to buy himself opportunity to break contact. I think that's really wise, right? That's your mission as a private citizen, is to break contact with a deadly threat. But remember, he gets a vote. So here, in my opinion, even if you had something like an OC spray, this would be a great place to deploy that OC. Now, of course, you'd already have to have it in hand. OC spray is not an emergency deployment item. But again, if you think he's got a firearm here, but it's not in hand and ready to deliver, are you capable and competent of getting it out quickly? I hear a lot of people say yes, but we don't see a lot of people with those actual skills.
Yeah, we just don't see much of that. But another thing that I'd like to add to that, John, is I would like to see him break visual contact as well. So hooking around the back of the pickup, maybe to the other side of the vehicle to get the vehicle between you and the bad guy, gets you out of, at least your waistline is out of his vision. And so bad guys carry their stuff on their waistline, so do good guys. So even if you don't have something, you're going to plant some doubt seeds in his mind of, why can't I see this guy's waist? His hands are down here. What's he getting out? And are we getting in a gunfight? It also means that you have the opportunity to duck. If he really did have a gun, you've got a chance to duck, and you've got some cover, some concealment between you and the bad guy. So I would have loved to seen him, hook around the back of that pickup. Also, he would have got to his rake a little quicker.
Yeah, he had that available to him there. I do think, of course, carrying your tools on your person, and not a rake, but rather, a firearm, an OC spray, a medical kit, I think are the things to have. And I know plenty of people, well, I only carry a firearm if I know I'm going into a place where there's trouble. Well, you don't get to set that time. It's the bad guy who sets the time and the place of the attack. So he's only going to tell you about it at the last minute. Carry your dang gun. Now, our guy here is trying to get away. He's trying to break contact, and I think that is really laudable. But when he can't do that, now the fight starts, and our bad guy is who closes the distance, and he kind of starts with a yard sale here and recognizes now he doesn't really have a gun. And so, hey, fighting skills are important for self-defenders as well. At this point here, once the guy is close distance and is starting to throw punches, you can't use an OC spray. It's not going to be helpful. So this is why I say empty-handed skills, whether that's a traditional martial art or Western boxing or, Muay Thai, something like that, that has value for even, and especially those of us who carry a firearm, because it gives us something between, as Chuck Haggard says, a harsh word and a gun.
Yeah. I'll add to that, John, that you've got to be able to take a punch as well as know how to give one. And so if you've never stood in in a ring, if you've never stood on a mat, if you've never been punched in the face, and understand that it's not life ending, it doesn't knock you out with one shot like we see on TV and that kind of stuff. You understand what you can withstand as far as the attack goes. And you also will learn what you can give out as far as, fighting back is. And so I think that's a very valuable thing to do is, I'm not saying you have to join a gym and spend the next 25 years learning how to box or how to do jujitsu or any of that kind of stuff, but a little bit of time on the mats, a little bit of time under some instruction so somebody can show you how to do these things and give you a little bit of an example of what it feels like when these things happen to you, will give you a lot more confidence in the moment to stand and deliver when you have to.
I totally agree. And I remember as a teenager, in high school, the first time I got punched in the face by somebody who wanted to hurt me, and going, oh, okay, I'm okay, but now it's on. And that's actually a freeing feeling, because it gives you the opportunity to say, I'm okay. And it looks like our defender has that here, that he's not worried about this guy punching him. because he gets after him. Now, I do want to note here as well, and we are tool users at Asp, and I'd prefer tools. I've been in a few fist fights. I was certainly as a kid, as a teenager. I'd prefer not to. I got 19 years of martial arts study, but I'd still prefer not to get in fist fights. Here's a spot where it breaks open a little bit. This is a time to bless this guy with the hot sauce. I don't want to have a fight with you. I'd rather OC spray you, get in your eyes, get, in your mucous membranes, make you not want to fight me anymore. Or even if you do, at least you're diminished and my fight is easier.
Yeah, that's the thing. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, man, if you had an OC, the second he put him on the ground, that's the time to go for your OC tool, in this particular moment, because you've got a second that it's going to take him a good second to get back up and a good second and maybe even 2 to 3 to re-engage. So now you've got time to get that out, get that in a fight, douse him into the face with some OC. And man, that changes behaviors quickly with folks. So again, there is a right time and a wrong time, and there might be opportunities along the way, even once the hands-on fight has started, that you can back up and deploy your tool.
Yeah, and what we find is that OC spray is about 90% effective. About 90% of people, it's fairly immediately incapacitating within a few seconds. They don't want to do anything other than get away from the pain and the involuntary eye closure and the mucous membrane drip. About 10% of people are light response. About 10% it doesn't matter if you like spicy food or anything like that. But 10% of people are just low response to OC spray. But you don't lose anything then. They still want to fight. They wanted to fight you already. You're in the middle of a fight. They still want to fight. All right, cool. Get after it. So it's no downside to you to try. Now, instead, our guy gets a rake. And hey, man, if you don't have a purpose-built tool, finding an environmental tool is pretty cool. I don't know that this strategy with the tool, let me use the Reiki part. I think more if you had turned this around and kept the rake close to you and used it more as a pokey stick and like a Joe staff or a bow staff, would have been more effective. But I don't think most of us think about, hey, how am I going to use a rake as a defensive tool?
Yeah, I think potentially if I could get inside our good guy's head just a second, I think he was thinking at first, I'm going to use it as a distance creating tool to get him to back up. And then if he does charge me, I can just press into him with the rake and keep that distance. And I bet that would be one of the regrets if we talk to our good guy here and asked him, what would you do different? I bet he would say I would have turned that rake around and whacked him with it. But either way, he found a tool in his environment that could give him some advantage, give him some distance, and made this guy think twice. He didn't want any part of that rake. And, while that's not a heavy tool, it can scratch you up pretty good and it can keep you at distance while this guy wails on you with it. And eventually it's going to wear you down. So I love the move of going to the back of the pickup and finding a tool to finish this fight.
Yeah, if you don't have a purpose-built tool on your person available to you, finding something in the environment, find something that enables you to multiply the amount of force that you're able to generate. That gives you more distance, that gives you more time. And again, that only works if it's coupled with an attitude of self-protection. And that's what our defender had enough of, is that he had an attitude of self-defense. He had an attitude that says, I'm not going to be a victim no matter what. And that attitude prevailed even with an environmental weapon. Now, of course, he is lucky that this guy didn't really have a gun. If the guy really had a gun, we might be very well singing a very different tune here. But thankfully we don't. And they go back and forth a little bit and kind of get after it. Final thing I want to say is actually, I really like that our defender here chose to break contact, that as soon as he could get this guy far enough away from him, he goes inside the store. Now, I would try or ask the employees, I'd keep those doors closed behind him and not let the guy in the door if I possibly can. But putting a barrier between you and him, Neil, I think that was really smart.
Yeah, as soon as he got that distance and got an opportunity to get to the door, he dove through there quickly. And I really like that because we do see, our attacker, our aggressive guy, come back into the screen. Now, he's just coming in to pick up his newspaper and whatever it was that he left over there by the tire, which is probably the black thing that he's threatening people with to begin with. So he's not going to want to leave his tools behind. But yeah, getting through that door, locking it if you can, yelling for someone to call 911, starting to use your voice to communicate what needs that you have will identify you as the victim as well. So if you just dive through the door and don't say anything, the people inside probably don't know what's going on out there, haven't seen what's going on, and don't know who you are. So they can't identify you as the, our good guy in the scenario. So using your voice is another really important piece to this.
I really think it is. I think our defender did a fine job here. He was paying attention. He had great fighting skills. He knew what he needed to do, used some environmental tools, and covered his ass.